So hello guys and welcome to this new tutorial in which we're gonna create a Django RESTful API. So if you're new to this channel, please don't forget subscribing and hitting the like button and following us on Instagram. So what's an API? So the traditional way to define it is as being a set of routines, protocols, and tools for building software applications. An API specifies how software components should interact, and APIs are used when programming graphical user interface components. It's like an information gateway that allows the backends of the software and services to communicate with each other. An API allows one piece of software to talk to another. More specifically, an API is a program that takes requests, tells the system what needs to be done, and then returns a response. One of the best analogies I've heard to describe an API is as a waiter at a restaurant. You need the waiter to communicate your order from you at your table to the kitchen where the food is made. So the same is true with an API. The waiter, the API, takes your order, the request, from your table to the kitchen, the system, and returns with your food, the response. REST is a set of architectural constraints, not a protocol or a standard. API developers can implement REST in a variety of ways. So when a client request is made via a RESTful API, it transfers a representation of the state of the resource to the requester or endpoint. This information or representation is delivered in one of several formats via HTTP. JSON is the most generally popular programming language to use because, despite its name, it's language agnostic and as well as readable by both humans and machines. So let's go ahead and start our initial setup. So Django creates websites containing web pages, while Django REST framework creates web APIs, which are a collection of URL endpoints containing available HTTP verbs that return JSON. To do so, Django admin start project config period. So the next step would typically be to start adding apps, which represent discrete areas of functionality. A single Django project usually contains multiple apps. Let's go ahead, Python, manage.py, start app, books. Now let's go ahead and configure our models.py. So we're gonna create a basic Django model. So now we need to create a migrations file. So for our newly created model, Python manage.py make migrations, and we specify the app's name, which is books. So it says no installed app with label books. So to fix this, we need to go to the settings.py on the config directory. We go to the installed apps and tell Django about our app. Because Django doesn't know about a newly created app if we don't specify it explicitly here. So now that Django knows about our app, let's go ahead. Perfection. And now let's migrate. Amazing. Let's start the server and check that everything works fine. Perfect. So the str method is used so that the title of a book will display in the admin panel later on. Let's start by creating a super user. So Python manage.py create super user. I'm just gonna call it admin. I'm not gonna specify an email, and the password will be admin as well. And now let's go ahead and run the server. Here we go. Now, as you can see, we can't find our books model. So to have it, we need to register it first in the admin.py. To do so, we go to the admin.py, we import our model. So from .models, import book. So it's site.register book. Perfect. And we need to add register here first. Okay. Register is not defined. Oh, sorry, it's admin. Perfect. So now let's go back. Now let's go ahead and configure our admin app. Now we can find our app in our model. So let's create some books here. Perfect, that should be enough for now, for the purpose of our video. And now let's go ahead and list them on our page view. To do so, we're gonna configure our views.py file. So the views.py file controls how the database model contents is displayed. So a view function is a Python function that takes a web request and returns a web response. So since we want to list all the books, we are going to use the built-in generic class view, the built-in generic class list view. So let's configure our URLs. So let's go to the admin, to the URLs file in the config, and let's import include and add a file to our application here. So we're gonna tell it if it's just a local host, plain and simple, go use the URLs that you will find here in books.urls, and we'll go to the books app and we'll create a new file over there called urls.py, and it's gonna be the same style as here. So I'm just gonna copy this here like this, and we're gonna tell it that whenever the URL is like an empty string, use the book list view that as view. Gorgeous. Now let's go ahead and configure our templates. So the way Django works is that it looks for templates inside the apps by default in a folder called templates, which I'm creating now, inside another folder called the same name as the app's name, books. And over there, we're gonna create our file, booklist.html. Yeah, so the name of the object is object list, and therefore to loop over each book, we write this sentence over here, and then it displays each field from our model this way. Oh, I guess I switched it. It should actually be Django.views.generic. Okay, it's working now. So let's go and check our server here. And let's go to the main page, to the home page. Perfect. So as you can see, Django listed all the books we have in the database with the title, the author, and the category. So now we're gonna work on our Django REST framework. So Django REST framework is added just like any other third-party app. So let's quit our local server, then let's install it using this command pip-inv install Django REST framework. So as any other app, we need to add it to our installed app over here. Perfect. So our API will expose a single endpoint that lists all our books in JSON. So we will need a new URL route, a new view, and a new serializer file, which we'll talk about later on. So there are multiple ways we can organize these files, but however, my preferred approach is to create a dedicated API app. The way if we added more apps in the future, each app can maintain the models, views, templates, and URLs needed for dedicated web pages. But all API-specific files for the entire project will live in a dedicated API app. So let's first create a new API app. So as we did before, Python manage.py start app, and we'll call it API. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and add it to our apps. And let's go configure our URLs. And for our API URLs, I will call them URLs. And like we did before, we're gonna go to the API app, create a new file called urls.py. And since we're lazy, we're just gonna go here, copy this from .views, import. We're gonna call it book API view, for example. Perfect. Now our next step is we're gonna go to the views.py. So let's go ahead. So on the top lines, we import Django REST frameworks generics class of views, the models from our books app, and then serializers from our API, which we'll make next. And then we create a book API view that uses list API view to create a read-only endpoint for all book instances. So there are many generic views available, and we will explore them further in later tutorials. The only two steps required in our view are to specify the query set, which is all available books, and then the serializer class, which will be in the book serializer. So let's go ahead and create a serializers file. So a serializer translates data into a format that is easy to consume over the internet, typically JSON, and is displayed at an API endpoint. It's easy to create a serializer with Django REST framework to convert Django models to JSON. So we created our serializers file, and now let's go ahead with the code. So on the top lines, we import Django REST framework serializers class and the books model from our books app. Then we extend Django REST frameworks model serializer into a book serializer class that specifies our database model book and the database fields we wish to expose, the title, the author, and the category. So at this point, we're almost done. All we need to do is go ahead and run our server. Python manage.py run server. So if we go to our website and launch our server and go to the API view, here we go, we get a list of all the books that we have. So as you can see, Django REST framework provides this visualization by default, and there is a lot of functionality built into this page that we will explore. So as you can see, congratulations, we have finished our API app. So thank you for watching, and see you on the next tutorial.